Hey everyone, my name is Poisonblade and I hope all of you are doing well today. So for today's video, I'm going to be building a habitat for the Formosan black bears. And I'm going to be building a small shrine, which of course has a huge statue, because why not? But in general, today's build is going to be a lot more demure, down to earth, and for me down to basics compared to the wizard's tower, because besides the shrine, it's just nature. There's not that much in the way of actual big builds or anything. But anyway, so today's video is also going to be probably the closest thing to a tutorial you guys are going to get from me, because I'm going to try and describe my sort of route from A to B. So I'm not going to describe, oh, I'm using this piece or this piece. I'm just going to describe how I go from the concept to the actual build, and while I'm building also a little bit. But anyway, with that being said, let's get straight into today's video. So as I said, I'm going to try and describe as much as possible about just the phases that a build goes through when I'm building. And the reason why I said that this is like the closest thing to a tutorial you guys are going to get from me is because tutorials are just not my style of videos. I rarely watch them myself. Like when Plant Zoo just got released, Stan and Rudy, if I'm right, had some tutorials. I probably watched only one of each, and maybe not even the entire video. This is in no way trying to shame both of them. It's just not my style of content, and it's not really something that I want to do myself. Probably really helpful tutorials, but it's when I make videos or when I watch YouTube videos, it's mostly just like goofing around, and you can see that in my videos. Like, I don't think I can look back at any of my videos besides if I was really talking about the serious points, but any other video I'm usually just goofing off. But today is going to be slightly different because I'm going to try and describe the entire process. Of course, starting with the statue. Well, the statue is somewhat of a late addition, because when it came to the concept, I never really planned out my zoos. When Plant Zoo was about to be released, a lot of Reddit posts were about people really drawing out their zoos. I have never really done that. For me, there's just this huge chance that you sort of lose the organic vibe to the place then, because then everything is so laid out in your mind that for me it's somewhat, it would feel constricting. So none of my builds are really planned out from the start. Kayan al-Bashar is really difficult in that case, because Valhalla and Isla Psíquica have some forms of terraforming already done. So with Valhalla there's some mountains. Isla Psíquica actually had all of the terraforming or terrain work done, so there's a lot already to start from there. Kayan al-Bashar, I basically built every floating island just from scratch as soon as the build start. Kayan al-Bashar is actually one of the most difficult ones. But when it comes to today's build, basically after the wizard's tower, I didn't want to build a huge build, because this is just my idea when it comes to big buildings or big builds. If you have a lot of them very close by, none of them really shine, but if you space them out, maybe have less of them, then each one really shines. So for the wizard's tower, it's such a big building compared to the rest of the area so far. Like, the rest of the area is forests and such. Like, there's a small hunting cabin nearby, which actually I also drew inspiration from for today's video, or for today's build. But I wanted the wizard's tower to shine, so I wanted something demure, really almost like it compared to an RPG or something like that, where you have the ability to explore. Like, this is an area that in your main playthrough, or at least when I do the first playthrough of a game, I don't really go exploring. I just want to see the story. But then later on you start exploring on your second playthrough, and you find these little nooks and crannies that are beautiful but aren't really tied into the main story, but they are kind of I would almost call them small gifts or Easter eggs of small areas that you don't find on your main playthrough, but then you're why didn't I find this earlier? So that's what I wanted to have here. And so, as I said, I drew inspiration from the hunting cabin that I built nearby. Sadly, it's a build that was built right when I somewhat vaulted Valhalla, so that's where I sort of stopped building on it for some time. So the footage of building that hunting cabin is lost because I think it's by now 3 months ago when I built that. But I drew inspiration from that, and then there was this small cliffside. Again, this is where terraforming or terrain work before you start actually building things really helps, because it can also give you ideas. Again, why Canalbshire is really difficult to build in. But there was this small cliff peeking out, and then it was just general, well, it's a cliff. So a cliff, in my case, already gives me a lot of ideas. Like a small hill can give me an idea. So I thought, alright, I want something to mirror a little bit down to earth. So then I first thought, of course, meadow, or like something where there's a little bit of open space. And then I thought, ooh, there's this hunting cabin nearby, maybe I can tie it into that. Maybe this forest is like really bountiful when it comes to like hunting and such. And then I went, because Valhalla is based on like Norse mythology, although there's now also Turian legends and such, with, well, the Wizard's Tower, I sort of built it as like Merlin's Tower. In the main thing, Valhalla is of course built on Norse mythology. So then I went to look for like, what figures could I use? Or like, what stories of Norse origin can I use? And then I first went for like fertility goddesses and gods. But then I thought, no, like, I probably want to save those for like farm areas, because then they can really shine there. So then I slowly went to the more, well, I want to say mystical, but that's only in the case of this god, which is Ullr, or probably going to mispronounce his name, but it's a hunting god, or he's a hunting god. Also, Skadi was there, and here's the fun thing, Skadi and Ullr, they are both the god and goddess of winter and hunting. Skadi, the goddess of winter and hunting, and Ullr also the god of winter and hunting. Although I think Skadi is more tied to winter and Ullr more to like archery and such. Ullr is also a little bit more of a mysterious god. It's kind of a trend in, well, not trend, but in the case of Norse mythology, a lot of it wasn't really written down for a long time. It was more of like an oral tradition, and only after the regions where it was really prevalent were Christianized was it written down. This is not my like knowledge. This is really a showcase of like, I don't take YouTube serious in a way, where I don't watch any really serious content, but I watched a lot of Overly Sarcastic Productions videos, and well, that's where most of my knowledge about mythology comes from. But they basically said like, oh, just Norse mythology in general wasn't really written down, and then after it got Christianized, or the region got Christianized, then they start to write them down. But then it's like, what is a later like addition to sort of Christianize these stories, and what is actually like accurate Norse mythology? But yeah, or from what I've read and what I've researched myself, is this really mysterious god, because there's so little known about him, but he seemed like a very major god for a long time. So that's why I wanted to use him instead of Skadi, because Skadi just, to me it seemed like she was a bit more well known of a goddess. So because I wanted this area to be really demure, really like a hidden gem as it were. And yes, I'm biased by calling it a gem, but I really like Valhalla. Just lately I've just been really into like Valhalla and this really rustic vibe that Valhalla has. Canalbshire is a little bit more chaotic, and Valhalla is a really natural, really just rustic and down to earth. So lately I've just been really into that vibe. But anyway, so Ullr was this mysterious hunting god, so then I thought I can use that, and to further add on to that mystery factor, I wanted to make the shrine basically like it was built on top of something else. So I made these small ruins, and then the wooden structure on top of it looks a little bit more new, but you can also see it was basically just placed on top of it. So the statues may be original, but the wooden structure is a new one. So there's kind of this vibe that I wanted to create, like what was here before? What was this building? Why was this statue of Ullr there? Only recently has it like been rebuilt or being built on top of to make it into like a shrine. So yeah, that's kind of like, I start off with the idea or like the area, and then I get an idea from that area or anything that's next to it. Again, I don't plan out any zoos, I don't draw anything down. Like lately when my PC was gone, I did draw some things down, but even then that wasn't ever like a build that I wanted to build. It was just getting some kind of like vibe set. So for Candle of Shara, it's sort of just a vibe that I drew out, and for Valhalla I did the same. Yeah, I never really planned something down, plan anything really concrete. I just plan, this is the starter build, and the starter build is always the most difficult because it's tone setter. Like, as I said, I draw inspiration from the area that I'm building in, and then from everything that's right next to it so that it all blends in together well. And here is something that's just the biggest tip I can give you: reference pictures. Every time I build something, I have reference pictures up. Even if I have a very concrete idea of what I want to build, I always search for reference pictures, because in my experience, ideas can sometimes get foggy when you're building, but because I have like a lot of reference pictures up, I can easily pin down, oh, this is what I wanted to build, and this is what I could actually add to it. So yeah, with every build, even if it's just nature, have reference pictures, because it just helps a lot to pin down what you want to build, but also add onto it. Because when you type in a Google search, you get one picture that probably really speaks to you, but then 1,000 others that somewhat speak to you, but you just want to use like one part of it. So yeah, biggest tip I can give you: start with reference pictures, or not start, but have a lot of reference pictures. Even when you're building and have like a really set idea, never hurts to look for a reference picture to maybe draw some new inspiration, maybe think of something that you haven't thought of before. So for today's build, I literally just looked up Norse fantasy temple. Like, I searched Norse fantasy buildings and I didn't really get anything. I got a lot of Minecraft builds, and that sometimes helps, most of the time it doesn't. Also, another general tip that I can give you guys: don't start building statues until you're very comfortable with the building mechanics in Planet Zoo. Because statues is only something I've learned to do recently, and even then it's something that you can easily burn yourself out on, because it's really difficult. Because, well, for me, it's because I can't actually hold or touch the statue or the art thing that I'm building. It's always sort of like you're away from it. But now, as I said, it's a lot more of a demure and down to nature and down to basics build. So yeah, the rest of the habitat or build for today is going to be just nature. And here I can sort of describe my process. It starts with rocks usually. Then after that, I always do like ground covering shrubbery and then larger bushes after that. And then later, at the very end, I do the trees. Because if you want a natural looking nature section, nature isn't boom out of nowhere. If you want a very, I would say, Disney-esque looking nature part, then you can have that like transition from no nature to giant trees in an instant. But if you want something really natural looking, there's always this like build up. Trees are only like the pinnacle. Most of the nature is shrubbery, bushes and such. And the idea for this area was, well, there's this giant cliff there. There's going to be maybe heavy rainfall, or like after, well, heavy winters, there's going to be like the water or the snow that melts and then drops down from the cliff. So then I thought, alright, this water has to go somewhere. It probably is going to drag earth and mud and maybe some small stones with it. So there's going to be this sort of, I would almost say, scar in the earth or nature, where you could see where it dragged things away and nature didn't really get a chance to grow there. So there's just this sort of, kind of looks like it's dried up. To further add onto it, there was also a little pond that I built completely downstreams, or what would potentially be downstreams. So yeah, that would just be an area that would, with heavy rainfall, would maybe form into a small stream. But then this is something I did not think I would build, But in the end I did end up building because, well, originally I didn't think that this would be a good place for it. But because we are building a habitat for bears, I wanted to build a bear den. And here again, reference pictures. I don't live in an area where there's like bears everywhere. I only have seen bears in zoos. Because of that, I had to look up like, alright, how does a bear den look? Here's a little bit of like Planet Zoo versus reality, because Planet Zoo, you have to make these things a little bit bigger, because there's like the hitbox of the animals, so a bear den would probably be like half this size, or at least half as big or broad when it comes to the entrance. But in Planet Zoo you have to sort of wiggle around that. But I had to look up like, oh, how does a bear den look? How does it look when it's like, what's the size? How deep does it go? Because of all those reference pictures, like, I got a clear idea, alright, this is what I need. And again, here you can see, starting with the rocks, then the small shrubbery, and then bushes. Well, shrubbery and bushes I sometimes do interchangeably, like those things usually change, like sometimes I do the larger bushes first and then cover the area surrounding it with the shrubbery and ground covering. But again, I still end up with the trees. Like the trees, they aren't the, well, they are the biggest component, but they are the one that I do last, just so that you have that sloping feature. Yeah, that really build up. And here, the original idea for like a meadows thing, because again, I talked about fertility, gods and goddesses, so that was like harvest themed and such. But because of that, I also got the idea of a meadow. Now, when it comes to flowers, flowers are probably the most delicate plants that there are, so those are usually placed in areas where there's literally everything is perfect for them. There's a lot of sunlight, there's not like muddy area or like that potential stream or water drainage thingy. So this would be the perfect area. And yes, the bears get swallowed by these flowers. Like, whenever they walk through it, the cub essentially just disappear. The bears, you can sort of still see them, or the adult ones, you can sort of see them, but yeah. Sometimes I go relatively realistic, sometimes I just go overboard, but then most of the flowers, like the Formosan black bears, just are that small that they just get swallowed by everything. But anyway, that's going to be it for today's video. This is, again, the closest thing you guys are going to get when it comes to like a tutorial from me, because it's not really my style of videos. I just like to goof around. I never really have a script set, like I have some talking points, but most of the time when I listen back to the commentaries, I'm like, where did those talking points go? So yeah, that's going to be it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you enjoyed today's video, there's of course the like button and a subscribe button if you want to see more. There's also this bell button, which sometimes works and sometimes it doesn't. Most of the times it doesn't, but hey, maybe you're like me and you just like to click buttons. I again hope you enjoyed today's video, and I wish you all an amazing day, and bye bye.